Please remember to engage with this content by sharing your reactions and following for more captivating tales. I could never have anticipated that an unremarkable Tuesday evening would transform into something that would occupy my thoughts for months to come. At this stage of my life, routine seemed like the natural order of things: office duties, returning home, perhaps some herbal tea and a documentary before retiring for the night. Yet that particular evening, everything shifted with one surprising message. The notification appeared on my device just as I prepared to immerse myself in my novel. The sender's identity caused my pulse to quicken: Marcus Chen, a name absent from my world for countless seasons, carrying memories of shared conversations, meaningful looks, and an unspoken understanding that had once existed between us. Hello, Sarah. I realize this message comes without warning, but I find myself visiting your city for just one evening. Perhaps we could reconnect over a meal? My eyes remained fixed on those words, my thumb hesitating above the screen. Marcus and I had been colleagues nearly 20 years prior. He possessed that rare quality of quiet confidence, never boastful, yet eternally composed. Our connection had always been present, never inappropriate, but perpetually suspended in the space between us, awaiting the perfect opportunity. Unfortunately, that opportunity had never materialized, and life had guided us along separate paths. Now, after all this time, here was his message. My heart quickened as I responded, asking for location and timing. His reply arrived swiftly: 9 o'clock, the Sterling Hotel's Terrace Restaurant. I paused, recognizing the Sterling as one of the city's most sophisticated venues: refined, private, bathed in warm amber lighting that created an atmosphere from a bygone era. This transcended casual dining between former colleagues. Taking a measured breath, I smoothed my clothing and reminded myself this was simply dinner with an old acquaintance. However, my mirror reflection revealed otherwise: the way I reapplied my lip color multiple times, how I switched accessories at the final moment, the nervous flutter in my chest. Upon my arrival, the urban landscape sprawled before me in a spectacular array of illumination. The evening air held a crisp quality, carrying hints of approaching weather that had yet to arrive. Then I spotted him. Marcus stood beside the balustrade, contemplating the panorama, with a tumbler of amber liquid in his grasp. Time had treated him well. His graying temples appeared fuller than my recollection. His build remained solid, and when he noticed my approach, his expression brightened with that familiar, gradual warmth, as though no years had elapsed. Sarah, he said, moving closer, his tone carrying that same deep, steady familiarity. You appear unchanged by time, I responded with gentle laughter, shaking my head. Your flattery skills need improvement, he chuckled, gesturing toward a seat. Perhaps, but my words were sincere. The evening progressed through waves of dialogue and amusement, revisiting workplace humor and colleagues we'd lost contact with. The intervening years dissolved with each anecdote, each taste of our chosen beverages. Then, somewhere between our final course and another drink, our conversation took a different direction. Tell me something, he said, his voice becoming more contemplative and hushed. Why did we never pursue what seemed inevitable? He allowed the question to linger in the air between us. My breathing caught. I understood his meaning perfectly, having pondered the same question repeatedly throughout the years. Circumstances were complicated, I eventually replied. You had commitments then, and I honored those boundaries. He acknowledged this with a nod, tracing the edge of his glass. I did have obligations, and when those circumstances changed, life had already moved forward. Yet I consistently wondered about alternative possibilities. I felt my throat tighten. There existed something profoundly intimate about dormant emotions emerging after years of burial. Do you still wonder about those possibilities? I asked before restraint could stop me. He regarded me thoughtfully, then released a soft laugh. I do. The atmosphere between us became electric, like standing at the precipice of uncharted territory. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to wonder as well. The evening was far from concluded. The Terrace Restaurant had grown quieter, the city's energy settling into gentle background ambience. The flickering candle between us cast shifting shadows across Marcus's features. His expression remained enigmatic, yet his eyes held something I hadn't witnessed before, something I couldn't quite identify. I lifted my glass, my grip tightening around the stem. So, I said, attempting lightness in my tone, what exactly occupies your thoughts now? Marcus reclined in his chair, maintaining steady eye contact. I wonder how circumstances might have unfolded differently had I made alternative decisions. Warmth filled my chest, equal measures of nostalgia and something approaching dangerous longing. The past cannot be altered, Marcus. No, he agreed, his fingers drumming against his glass's surface. Yet sometimes the past finds ways to return to us. I released a quiet laugh, shaking my head. That sounds like dialogue from a film. His mouth curved into a knowing smile. Perhaps, but tonight, this moment, it feels far from coincidental, doesn't it? I swallowed, my pulse accelerating. His observation rang true. Years had separated us. Life had directed us down different paths, yet here we sat across from each other, not as former colleagues reminiscing, but as something else entirely. Something unresolved. The air felt dense, charged with the tension that exists only between two people who had almost been something significant, but never were. Join me, Marcus said suddenly, rising and extending his hand. I hesitated. Where might we go? He smiled, inclining his head toward the lift. For a stroll somewhere more secluded. Every logical part of my mind urged me to decline, to finish my drink, bid farewell, and depart with my composure intact. Yet my heart, the one that had once raced whenever he entered a room, made the choice for me. I accepted his hand. The warmth of his palm against mine sent an unexpected tremor through me. He guided me toward the elevator, and as the doors closed behind us, the silence grew even more intense. Neither of us spoke during our descent, but I could sense the tension between us, thick and undeniable. When the doors opened, Marcus led me through the hotel's quiet corridors until we emerged into a private garden, hidden from the city's commotion. A small water feature bubbled at the center, surrounded by vine-covered walls. Overhead lights created a soft golden ambience across the stone pathway. It was the type of place you'd never discover unless you knew precisely where to search. How did you know about this sanctuary? I asked, breaking our silence. Marcus placed his hands in his pockets, surveying our surroundings. I stayed here once years ago, discovered this place accidentally. I thought you might appreciate it. I smiled, wrapping my arms around myself against the cool evening air. You remember my preferences? His expression softened. Sarah, I remember everything about you. Something in his delivery made my chest constrict. We stood there momentarily, neither moving, neither daring to disturb whatever delicate thread maintained this moment's balance. I'm uncertain what this represents, I finally admitted, my voice barely audible. I don't know whether it's merely nostalgia or something more. Marcus moved closer just enough that I could feel his warmth in the cool night air. Does it require definition? I looked up at him, searching his face for something: reassurance, understanding, perhaps even confirmation that I wasn't irrational for feeling this way after all these years. Yet all I saw was a man who had once been an unanswered question in my life, now offering me a response for the first time. Before overthinking could intervene, I did something I never would have dared years ago. I reached for his hand. Just like that, past and present merged in ways I never could have anticipated. The moment my fingers intertwined with his, something transformed in the space between us. It transcended nostalgia. It was something genuine, something alive. I felt it in how his thumb traced over my knuckles, how his eyes searched mine as if seeking permission to venture further into the unknown. I didn't withdraw. Marcus exhaled slowly and steadily, as if anchoring himself in the moment. Are you certain? He asked quietly, his voice patient. I wasn't certain of anything except that I didn't want to release his hand. So I didn't. Instead, I tightened my grip and offered him a small, somewhat nervous smile. I believe I've spent too many years being certain about the wrong things. His lips parted as if he wanted to speak, but then he simply nodded, his fingers interlocking with mine. Just like that, the years between us faded into the background. We walked silently, following the stone path through the garden. The distant city sounds felt worlds away. The night air was crisp, carrying scents of rain that still hadn't arrived. I felt strangely buoyant, as if I'd left behind the woman who had arrived at the terrace restaurant just an hour earlier. As we reached the garden's edge, Marcus stopped, turning to face me completely. His expression remained unreadable, but his eyes, deep and steady, held something unspoken. There's something I never shared with you, he said, rubbing his neck. Back when we worked together. I tilted my head. Oh. He hesitated, then released a quiet laugh, shaking his head. I used to create excuses to pass by your workspace, even when unnecessary. Warmth spread through my chest, an old flutter of feeling I had nearly forgotten. I was aware, I admitted, smiling. I just never understood why. His gaze softened. Because your presence made each day brighter. The simplicity of his words made my breath catch. It wasn't grandiose poetry, yet somehow it meant more than either could have. I swallowed hard, feeling that familiar tension returning, the same tension that had always existed between us, lingering just beneath the surface. So why did you never say anything? I asked, my voice softer now. He exhaled, running his hand through his graying hair. Because I had commitments and because I respected you too much to place you in that position. My chest tightened. And now, he stepped closer, just enough that I could feel his warmth. Now I'm wondering if we're out of reasons to hesitate. I searched his face, my pulse hammering in my ears. There had always been something incomplete between us, something unexpressed. Now, standing here in this quiet little garden, I realized that unfinished element was still awaiting resolution, or perhaps a beginning. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Marcus, I don't know what this represents, I admitted. I don't know if it's simply the past catching up with us or something else entirely. He studied me for a long moment before reaching up, gently tucking a wayward strand of hair behind my ear. What if it's both? His touch was careful, hesitant, as if afraid that one wrong move might shatter whatever fragile thing was forming between us. I closed my eyes briefly, steadying myself, then met his gaze again. Then maybe I don't want to overanalyze it. A slow smile spread across his lips. Neither do I, just like that. The weight of years of unspoken words and possibilities seemed to lift. For the first time in ages, I wasn't contemplating the past or future, I was simply here with him in this moment. Perhaps for now, that was sufficient. The night enveloped us, quiet and full of possibility. There was something dreamlike about standing here in this tucked-away garden, holding hands with a man I had once thought was merely a passing chapter in my life. But now I wasn't so certain. Marcus hadn't released my hand, and I hadn't pulled away. Instead, we stood there as if waiting for the world to catch up with whatever had just shifted between us. Join me, he said softly, tilting his head toward the hotel entrance. I hesitated, not because I was uncertain of him, but because I was uncertain of myself. I was mature, not youthful. I had spent a lifetime making cautious choices, following expected paths. Yet standing here now, with my hand in his, the most spontaneous choice somehow felt like the correct one. I nodded. He led me inside, not toward the busy lobby but down a quieter corridor where a lounge with subdued lighting and soft jazz offered more privacy. We settled into a secluded corner, the room's warmth enveloping us like a cocoon. A server appeared, and before I could consider ordering, Marcus spoke. 2 glasses of your finest red, please. I raised an eyebrow. You remember my preferences? He smiled. As I mentioned, Sarah, I remember everything. There was something about how he spoke my name slowly, deliberately, that sent a shiver down my spine. The wine arrived, and as I took a measured sip, I studied him. The years had marked both of us. There were lines around his eyes, silver in his beard, but none of it made him appear older. If anything, it made him look like a man who had lived, who had learned. I don't know how to process this, I admitted, swirling my wine. This situation between us. Marcus leaned forward, his forearms resting on the table. What if you didn't need to know? What if, for once, we simply allowed things to unfold naturally? I exhaled, letting his words settle. I had spent my entire life planning, analyzing, ensuring I never stepped into uncertainty. But wasn't this what I had once wanted? The possibility of something real? I looked at him, then really looked at him, at the man who had always existed in the back of my mind, a possibility I had never dared explore. I think, I said slowly, setting down my glass, that I'm weary of wondering what might have been. His eyes darkened with something I couldn't quite identify. So in my silence stretched between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with something deeper, something waiting to be acknowledged. Then he reached for my hand again, not urgently, not possessively, just a quiet, steady touch, as if to remind me that this moment was real, that we were real. I squeezed his hand, a slow smile pulling at my lips. So what happens now? Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. Now I escort you to your vehicle like a gentleman, and then, if you'll permit me, I'd like to take you to dinner tomorrow. A proper one, no past, no regrets, just you and me. Warmth spread through my chest. That sounds like a beginning. He lifted my hand to his lips, brushing a soft kiss over my knuckles, then released it. Then let's begin. Just like that. The story I had never expected to write, the one I had spent years unknowingly waiting for, commenced.